Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ajir Sellen, Senior Sales Manager, Outlook 2021, preparing your association for the New Year's event. Today, you hear from top association leaders across North America as they take a close look at some strategic planning critical to the future of associations, our new normal, the prospects of 2021, and how to transition your organization to get ready for the post-COVID era. Just a reminder to everyone, please feel free to send any questions during the discussion using the Q&A box, and we will address them after the discussion. Now let's meet the panel. We have Sharon Newport, Interim Chief Executive Officer for both DHL, Door Security and Safety Professionals, DHISO, and Door Safety Foundation. We also have John Toner, Vice President of Convention and Industry Collaboration at United Fresh Produce Association. We also have Alan Pratt, Executive Director of National Rural Education Association. Welcome, Sharon, John, and Alan. Now, Eric Schmidt, the CEO and co-founder of GlueUp.
Thanks, Ajir. And welcome everybody. Good morning and good afternoon. We're from here in Virginia. Welcome everybody to 2021 and our first event that we are hosting this year. Hopefully everybody has had a good start to the year. We're kicking off this year, of course, with this panel and our 2021 outlook, and we're going to have a good discussion today. So my first question will be for the panel, and as we go through, of course, take a moment to introduce yourself and your organization a little bit. For everybody else that's on the event here, you can find their bios and their links directly below the screen to find exactly a little bit more about some things about each of our participants today. As well, inside the platform, feel free to go ahead and share business cards with everybody. This is an opportunity not only to connect with, certainly listen to the panel, but also to connect with people who are participating in the event as well. So go ahead and share those business cards, and hopefully after this event, you all have a chance to connect with each other. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to kick it off with Sharon. Introduce yourself a little bit, and also two trends that you saw in 2020.
All right, let's dig in. So my name is Sharon Newport. I'm Interim Chief Executive Officer for DHI, Door Security and Safety Professionals, and its foundation. So two trends. I was ready for the conversation, but let's get in. So I have to tell you, one of the things that I thought was a trend from the association management perspective that turned into member experience perspective is there is nothing like crisis that force innovation. and we're very careful in when we launch programs and products and services, and you just didn't have time to be careful, nor did you have time to make them perfect. So the forced innovation through crisis, but also the willingness to try and stumble and prove to your member that you're trying to serve them. And I found that the forgiveness of members when you were just trying to cater to their ever-evolving needs was quite great. And so it was the perfect environment to not let perfect get in the way of good.
John, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm John Toner with United Fresh Produce Association. I am calling in from Washington, D.C. The nation's capital is alive and well. It looks, to me, it looks fantastic. The city's never looked better. A lot of streets have been cleaned up. They're actually fixing potholes. So it's pretty nice downtown. I've been at United Fresh. I guess this is my 22nd year. I'm going into my 22nd year at United, and my trends that I see are one in 2020. I guess we'll talk about 2021 moving forward. Spice, flavor. A lot of consumers focused on what do they like to eat at home, right? And so I think the custom experience, it's not going away. Everyone had a custom experience during the pandemic. And I think people are looking at how do they spice up their lives themselves. And then I think the other one that I see is communication. How we communicate internally and externally is going to be forever changed, right? Even just the concept of this meeting, you know, we've got 50 people on the line. None of us spent $1 to get here, yet we're all here together having a conversation. I don't know how that genie goes back in the bottle either. You know, 50 people to show up for a meeting used to cost $50,000. I don't know how that goes back. So I'm excited about the future. I'm happy to be working from home, and let's have a great conversation.
Absolutely. And welcome, Alan.
Yeah, thanks for having me today. And I think our, I guess, bright lights and highlights and different trends during 2020, probably a little different than the other two, since I'm the executive director of the National Rural Education Association. So I'm going to start on a negative and then hit to a positive. So a negative was all inequities that we currently battled before the pandemic were highlighted and spotlighted to the point where we know now, not that we didn't know before, but we really know now that broadband is very important to all rural communities and all rural schools. Getting students involved in the educating process and being innovative. So it kind of goes from a negative to a positive. So what we're seeing from our rural communities is what we usually see is people kind of band and come together and help each other out. We also saw, I think, a collaborative effort with broadband providers or cell providers or just different parts of the community to allow access for our students to be in the educational process. We also realized that you may not have to go to school 5 days a week to educate children. It could be something kind of unique and different, and it doesn't mean brick and mortar building all the time. So that's a positive coming out of it. And then I think, I think from a membership association, our membership's actually grown during the pandemic. And I think that's been because people want to be a part of something and people want a connection to what they thought was normal. We're in a new normal. And I think that's the positive part for us is the growth, but also we're going to be better coming out of this. And I think rural schools will be better coming out of this. If we could just solve the broadband issue, that would help us a little bit. So.
Very interesting. And certainly, we like children being in school because then that means they're not at home while we're working, right? But it is a.
But I'll build off Eric's comments real quick. I know, or not Eric, Alan's comments. My members grow in rural parts of the world, right? Like Chiquita, Del Monte, Dole, bananas come in from other countries. Lettuce gets grown in valleys. Apples gets grown in the hills. I'm in 100% agreement that, rural broadband helps solve a lot of challenges, right? Like I get back to my communication thing, communicating with rural parts of the country, it's not as easy as it is here in the city, yet sometimes we forget that.
Absolutely. And actually on that point, I guess, and John, we can start with you. For you all as an organization, what did you guys learn from 2020 that is going to help you coming into 2021?
We learned we have a lot of work to do, but how we organize our members in order to deliver a work product for them has changed a lot. Our boards and councils are probably working harder today than they were pre-pandemic. We're using the smaller bite-sized meetings to gather real intelligence, right? And then provide that intelligence back to the people that couldn't participate. So, we're working on how do we make sure that as we navigate our new normal or whatever, our path forward, when there's shared knowledge, we got to share it outside the room. We can't let the knowledge stay in the room. And that's, was one of the biggest impediments of coming to a show. You'd go to a show for 36 hours and you'd come home brain dead. And you'd forget half of the business cards. I mean, I still got stacks of cards on my desk from February that I haven't done anything with. And so to me, it's time management, is something too that we've worked really hard on as a staff to make sure that our timelines. We all agree to our timelines and nobody fudges them anymore, which is like, we don't have time to like build the padding of like 2 weeks because we know someone's going to be late.
Sharon, how about for you all?
Yeah, I mean, you know, in addition to what I was saying before about innovation and launching new stuff and just being willing to give it a shot, I think, you know, a couple of things that even building on Alan's comment about inclusion and equity. I mean, look, that inclusion and equity, we should all be looking at a little differently with what happened in 2020. And, you know, I would say that every organization, like I would consider the inclusion and equity as a journey and a strategy that should be woven throughout the organization. It's not a committee that sits on the side and does the stuff over here. It really should be a cultural philosophy for all of us, but we're in different places in the journey. And I would say with my organization, we're at the part where we're starting to talk about it and we're starting to figure out how could we do that. And it has different lenses. So your point about broadband, right? And that's not, you know, our members' thought, but it is around the component of North American building codes and how they're being adopted in different parts of the world. And therefore we're attracting members in different parts of the world. So how are we going to be inclusive of those folks? And the language barrier and it takes a lot to fly from Dubai to DC to take a class for 4 days. And so can we do this a little differently? So the fact that our innovation turned into online classes also helped strategically and programmatically start to address inclusion issues around access, because with doors, frames, and hardware, you think about touching stuff and assembling stuff. And so what can we possibly do online to help people continue to get their certifications and build those specifications and get the work done, because our members are essential. And so the work's got to happen, and schools need their stuff, and hospitals need their stuff, and office buildings need their stuff, and jobs are rolling. And there is a change in the market in terms of new construction, but current buildings need things all the time. And our members get jobs based on certification and education, and they come to us for that. They don't get it in trade schools. There is no non-manufacturer specific way to get that education except through us. So with the international lens, with the online lens, it also created it more accessible for the folks in the company that were not permitted to travel before, right? They're not that level in the company where they're like, yeah, you get a travel budget. But it allowed them to be able to take these classes and start to earn some credentials online. So through programs, but also kind of forced cultural lenses, and current events, we've looked at a couple of things differently, but I will also say that if you get enough ahead in the crisis, you don't have to wait for crisis to be over in order to be able to start to, as John was saying, plan and make a plan that can live amidst some disruption and still kind of be steady. So without jumping too far ahead into 21, I do feel like we've done some things in the midst of crisis that allow us to be able to have planned a 21 that certainly is going to get disrupted. We don't even know with what's going to come that's going to disrupt us. But I think we're in a place now where we've all done this for about a year. We'll be able to make some plans and live with them, because we already know the plan B and C that we'll be able to implement and execute successfully to get to that member need and help those, in my case, essential workers get through what they need to get through for their customers this year.
Yeah, it's hard to believe most of us have been working at home for almost a year now. So it's an interesting milestone that we're going to come up on very soon.
Mm-hmm.
How about for you, Alan? What are some of the things that your organization has learned that is going to set you up for a good 2021?
Well, we did our first virtual conference, which was, if you're talking about educators in a virtual conference world, and we're used to being in that social environment where we're interacting and doing different things. So the virtual component was successful. What it gave us is an avenue into people that never attended our conference before. I think Sharon mentioned the level of, the cost level went down because we were doing some virtual, but I think, teachers and undergrad students and professors, they were allowed to, to kind of zoom into our conference and see what was going on. The other aspect personally, which I love, which I'm ADHD and a little bit OCD, is the meeting process for me is streamlined more than ever. And I've learned quickly that if I can control the agenda and I can keep it to the point, we can have a great meeting and do things in 20, sometimes 15 minutes. And then I've also discovered I really like to be on a call and not necessarily Zoom all the time. The cell phone's become my friend again, and it's good to have a call. And the last one, and I won't be too crazy, I've not wore like a dress pant outfit in a long time. So I've had to button up, and I have shorts on today. So it's great. And you don't know. And we're all in the same boat. So I think that's been the positive. And I told my wife the other day, I kind of dread the dry cleaning bill coming back and doing all that again, where that's going to change as we start traveling. So I know it's a little off topic, but I apologize.
But it's true. I mean, most of our profile photos are either in a suit or a dress, and that's our profile photo. But hasn't been quite. It's been quite a while since I think most people have gotten that dressed up, especially with a tie. But
Yes.
We will see, and certainly 2021 is going to be shaping up for an exciting year itself. I guess. John, let's start with you all. As we look sort of at some of the economic indicators, obviously there's things that are doing extremely well. The stock market has been, certainly the housing market has been doing well. These are obviously some factors, but not everything. As you look sort of the economic conditions, to set up this year, how do you think that that's going to help or hurt the association in 2021?
Well, I think we all have a new bottom. And so I think there's how do we help our members and how do we help our bottom line, right? Those are two very different questions. And if we help our members, our bottom line will take care of itself. I do believe you do right by the membership, any membership. The membership's going to do right by you, right? Because we all want a better organization. I think a long time we kind of had a different adversarial role, but at the end of the day, everyone wants to work in a better industry than they did the year before. Everyone wants a better country club. Members pick up the trash at the country club. It's private versus public. I understand that, and we work for nonprofits. But maybe in public, we need to start acting more like private institutions sometimes, right? Like, picking up the trash when we walk down the street. Do you stop and pick it up? We all share the street. And so I think there's a lot of work that we look at that we're doing there, helping schools get access to fresh produce throughout the pandemic. The food banks are actually getting better quality product because we're shipping it direct to the food bank now. Wow. Like, why did they get the product from the retailer that was a day old that nobody wanted to buy? Right. And that's what we were giving the people that needed to eat the most in this world, was the product that people wanted to eat the least. And so I think we're working on some of those missing points, but I'm actually leading a webinar at 2:00 today on how we get the hospitality industry back, because that is a big driver. In produce, was kind of 50-50, maybe 55-45 retail versus food service, or like hotel, convention center type stuff. Obviously, during the pandemic, there was a big shift towards retail. Yeah, retail went up 17, 18, 19, 20%, but there's still a gap. Nobody, when you go out to dinner, you order the better salad. When you eat at home, you eat maybe not a different style of salad that doesn't include some of the fancier beets or some of the, more newer produce items, because anything that's new gets introduced at food service before it comes to retail. And so we're missing that pretty badly right now. And so once food service opens back up, even if it gets back to 40%, all of a sudden, consumption of fresh produce is up 10% year over year, which is a pretty good number that everyone's pretty happy with. But food service has to open back up. And so that's our big effort, is how do we support the food service industry, but then making sure that our own members have the right resources to keep fresh produce moving throughout this country. They've done a pretty good job so far. We're pretty pleased. March was a little hairy, but as we look at our own bottom line, it's value, right? Our sponsorship price points in the digital world, it's not as high as the physical world, but there's no expense associated with it now. We're not spending, you know, $1,000 on meter boards. We're not. We're just not. Yet we can still sell $1,000 sponsorship of a webinar that's 100% profit. Well, maybe you got to pay for your Zoom license a couple of times, but so I think that's where we're seeing the value. And the sponsors, they actually liked having the conversation with the attendee rather than the 2-minute infomercial that nobody wanted to listen to anyway. Sorry, but nobody wants the infomercial anymore.
So actually, let me just follow up on that too. So, you know, looking at that sponsorship model for the, you know, the virtual, your sponsors obviously got, you know, good feedback to you on that, and obviously are willing to come back. Is that what you saw?
I would say the sponsorships that you used it to engage with our membership, they love it. If they built a virtual exhibit and they sat there with their hands underneath their seat, that same thing happens in a in-person event when somebody sits there and they're looking at their cell phone and they're not watching who walks by. It's even worse in the digital environment. So I think we're also dealing with a generational shift at the same time, right? Like the guys that used to work the exhibits, guess what? They were all older than me. The people that are attending the virtual event, our virtual events, I'm going to say 90% of them are younger than me at this point. And so we're dealing too with different communication styles, right? It's like, how many memes of Barry Sanders have we seen in 24 hours, right? Like a lot. Everyone has done it. And so I think those are the different communication styles that we have to figure out how to embrace as we move forward.
Sharon, how about you?
Yeah, and I want to underpin, John, it's a fantastic story about the food banks. That's such a good example of programmatic solution and you know, service, but also with an equity component. I mean, that's a cool story. I love that. Sorry, Eric, what's the question again? I got very hung up on the storytelling and I lost where you want me to go.
Well, I mean, I guess let's follow up on that, because I think there's some interesting things that John had in here. And certainly I know that you guys have been, you know, active and trying to reshape sort of revenue models based on the last time I think you were on with us. You know, and so maybe let's fast forward to today. You know, as you looked at those revenue models and had discussions with the board, you know, what came out of that and what was successful and maybe less successful that you're trying to improve upon for this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. And now I'm remembering part of it was economy driven. So I can speak to both almost at once because, you know, one of the things that we delayed some work on our membership model. So we have a hybrid membership model. We are the hybrid of a professional society and a trade association from, you know, 45 years ago. So we've been in this hybrid model for since our existence. And our trade model is a unique trade model. It's not tradition where they have to report on their revenue and income. It's actually based on the business type. So we're a distributor facing organization. We focus on the channel. So we have manufacturers and sales agents who come as well. We have individual membership, and then we have membership based on the different types like the manufacturer distributor. But because we're distributor focused, we had in recent years launched a tiered membership offering. Where it's based on the individual dollar. So for $285, you can join as an individual, but we want to bulk it for you. So we want you to have as many people at the table as possible. And we will create prices that are based against that $285 and incentivize that. So if you have 20 or more, you can pay us $5,000 and you would have paid $5,700, but you can have unlimited. We just want all the bodies, like bring us all the people. And so even though we made that change and it was a very strategic and researched, significantly tested change. We were in the first few years of that. Even the last time we spoke, we were at that turning point where we thought we need to do something for the manufacturers. What could that be? And one of the decisions was not now, not now. We're not doing any major change there now, but we need to do some significant change in our education because of what I had said earlier, the need and the value of the education and certification component will drive, it is the key value proposition of membership for us. And what we see, you know, tying that to the financial component for forecasts and in the environment, we see it's possible that new construction will drop even further by about mid-year. And our folks, the doors, frames, and hardware is the last thing to be put in a new construction building. And so our trade is the last trade on a job site, and we're about 2 years in, right? It takes almost 2 years sometimes for a building to happen. So our industry feels those hits later than other trades. And so our industry, while having definitely had to adjust this year in a number of different ways, in some areas or pockets, certainly depending on the regional differences, we're doing great. And yet the pipeline is starting to be of concern when we look at about mid-year 2021. And so with the online classes that we launched during the pandemic and the ways in which we pivoted as much as we could, we certainly had to cancel everything. We are looking at ways to have smaller in-person events. We hold schools. So our schools can be up to 100 and so people, 200 people, but we're going to do what we're calling micro schools. We have essential workers. They're used to showing up to doing things. So if we can make it drive friendly and you come in for a class for a few days, we think they're going to know how to behave themselves. If we keep it safe for them, they'll probably come. And so far we're getting some interest in that. But how much can we do online before you bring you to the school, right? So can we get you a few days of education online, then bring you in for just a few, if it was a 5-day class, can we do 2 of it online and maybe 3 of it in person and shorten the in-person time, but help you get to that certification faster? So we've just had to get very innovative around those components. And then how can we replicate that in the Middle East? How can we replicate that in Canada? We have a DHI Canada. How can we support them in doing that? What's going on in China? How can we help them do that? So we have a little bit of, let's try it here and then show others how it could possibly be done. And do we need to send people around? You can't send them internationally yet, but how could we help move that along in 2021? And if that pipeline drives up and our members are in a different financial moment, which is the back half of the year that we all as associations thought maybe we can have a conference, like maybe we can show up to that, management meeting. We have a couple of bigger events at the end of the year. And so we're going to learn as we go, can we host those bigger schools? Can we have our management summit in December in Dallas? Can we do that? And we're going to learn. If we cannot, we're certainly aiming for 22. We don't believe that the value proposition of the thing goes away, but in the meanwhile, we can't leave a void. So we're doing everything we can to innovate those things. And so even some of the discussions we had earlier, frankly, I remember canceling a meeting we were going to have in April and said, well, we might be able to do it in June. No, that proved right. We all had those thoughts for the first few months. And we even tried to have a fall school. And by August, we went, yeah, I don't think we can do this. So I think we're at the point now where we just don't risk it. You change it and make it really tiny and doable, or you just don't do it. I mean, and that's our model thus far. We're going to learn as we go. I know, we don't have a big trade show anymore. So we don't have some of the bigger decisions that a lot of associations are having to have. And, in this moment, quite grateful.
Alan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, a lot of good points. I think for us, this is my 5th year on the job as the executive director. We were, before I came in and really structured and shifted some things around, our conference was a funding source for some of the stuff that we did. And I'm so happy we shifted away, because we would have been in a terrible situation this year with our conference going virtually and really just breaking even. And while I'm on a side note, I saw a chat about what platform we use for virtual. I think someone sent the question. We use Cvent, and that's the best one we could find that helped our goals. But our funding sources and our model, we've kept it the same in the sense of our membership. I'm going to do a shameless plug here for you, Eric. Okay. All right. We started the pandemic with Eventbank /GlueUp. So we rolled in with you at the start of the pandemic. So we're new. I'm going to tell you, I give the product and the platform credit for helping us out. And I'm not paid to make that statement, I promise. But it really did. It streamlined our process. It took something off my plate, took something off of our folks that work with us off their plate, and it made things easier. And it also made it where we're sitting at our membership rate dues. Usually we end up May, June is where we wrap our budget up or we wrap up our numbers, we're already at 98% of our match or our budget now compared to where we were last year. We were battling the May, June. So that's been a big positive for us. And I also think just the fact of this pandemic and our shift of our focus, I think John said it with members, and you serve your members first. This has allowed me more time to send those personal notes and a handwritten note to people that are maybe struggling in certain state affiliates, because we have 43 state affiliates. We have members in all 50 states. We're not a teacher base. We're anything that touches rural communities and schools, they're a member of our association. So it's not like we're kind of pigeonholed into one area. So we send birthday notes, just anything that we know if someone's struggling, we're going to reach out and say, we're here to help you out. And I think that's been the big focus, and I can see it in our numbers. So I might've rambled, but I think that's kind of the best approach for us right now.
No, but that's great. I mean, obviously having more cash and knowing it's in the bank at the beginning of the year as opposed to, certainly later makes it much easier to make decisions and strategic decisions, as you get, as you put things together and really start clicking with the year. So that's awesome to hear. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks.
Looking at, I guess, in general, and Sharon, I guess you touched upon a little bit about this when we talk about in-person events. So you guys, as of right now, are thinking about in-person events, Q4. How are you thinking about that? And what are some of the changes that you're thinking about making to those in-person events, knowing what we've gone through over the last year?
Yeah. So we're actually going to potentially dare to do that hybrid class that I was referencing this spring. We have a number of folks, we do a fire door inspection certification, and we have a pent up demand at this point of people that said, I'll show up if you'll do it in person. So we're going to try it. Or at least I should say we're exploring trying that. That's our plan. In fall, we have a school, but in December, we have a management summit. So really, it's just, school is really easy. You sit in a chair all day. You might get up to like touch and feel things or assemble stuff, and you could do it like they're sixth graders, right? You just form a line, everyone put on your gloves, keep your mask on. We haven't worked out all the details of that because some of them are electronic components. So the gloves, there's some things we have to think through. But that's really easy. You spread it out and you keep it really controlled. And that's pretty simple to plan. It's a matter of saying, maybe we just don't allow a certain capacity the way we used to. The management summit, we were quite hopeful. We still don't know if it's true or not true yet, but since it's in the first week of December, it's actually a springtime event that we pushed to Q4 with the best hope of trying to do it in person, because the board feels strongly, and they're right, that the value is in person. So we either do it in person or we don't do it, and we move it to spring of 22. And so they said, let's try to get it in 21. I guess that's got to be Q4, and that's show season. So you want to avoid the shows, and you end up in the first week of December. As you can imagine, a management summit, we're asking people to bring their teams. So we price incentive for people to sit together, collaborate, and then you're hoping people are bringing at least like 3 to 5 people. And so that'll be trickier. And to be honest, we haven't solved it yet. We're in the process of, we've found a site where we are talking about the meeting rooms. The other component to our management summit is, as part of a sponsorship, the manufacturers we call it channel exchange, and it's facilitated networking through an app, and it's scheduled, and they have their suite, and the distributors have their appointments with their channel partners. And that's part of the structure of the meeting, is going to their suite and meeting with your team, and then going to the next suite and meeting with the team. And that's very different than the content that we deliver. So that's easy to facilitate, but are we doing that the same as what we used to? Are we going to need to spread that out differently? A suite is small. You can't 6 feet apart with 7 people in a suite. So how are we doing that? And frankly, that's come up also because, to John's point, with the changes that have happened in the meeting and event space, one, for our price point, we can access something way higher end, right? We can afford the nicer site now, but it doesn't mean that it has all the components of the requirements of the meeting, particularly as the meeting space has to change, and we're still figuring out what that needs to look like. I think that, to kind of push forward, and one of the things I think will be true about this year is that I don't think the virus is eradicated this year. We're just gonna have to learn to live with it. And so what does that look like? And what are the new like comfort zones around that? You can only imagine with what you know right now, which is max 6 feet apart, you know, the sanitization, the PPE, like all the things that we would try right now, you just maybe feel a little more comfortable doing it. But we haven't thought through a mass of people getting on a plane and then showing up to the meeting like that night or the next day. I don't know anyone who's had to work through that on a mass level yet. That's the kind of thing, to be honest with you, we haven't thought through.
Interesting.
We'll
And
get there when we get there.
any feedback from sponsors yet? Or are they, willing to jump in, or what's been their impression so far?
I will tell you, we are very lucky. A couple of things that I want to like shout out my members for. One is they are deeply loyal. And so, we have a history of 90% retention every year, year over year. And my corporate members are at 90%. We were slightly under with individuals. And I think that's about the fact that some companies laid off and some people didn't stay in the industry, and, some things changed, but like 6 percentage points or something, like so tiny in the big scheme of things. So to that point about loyalty, when we canceled that spring management summit in 20, we said, hey, would you let us just push your sponsorship? We hope we'll do this next year and hang with us. And we'll give you this ad and this gift and this thank you and this promo, and just like hang with us. And for the vast majority of them, they did. And so they didn't make us refund them. They've hung in there. They're committed to the future of the event. They still haven't heard what it looks like, but they're with us. Some folks hadn't paid us yet, but are willing to. And so we're working on that now, and they just wanted a little time to prove that we're going to give the things we're going to give. And that is, to me, part of what's powerful about associations is I think we do things to try and earn that loyalty, that when things are tough for them, we're going to do everything. We're going to stretch ourselves to the very end to support their business needs, their, whatever it is that they need, we're going to work to do that. And in this moment, they could do that for us. I don't know that in the back end of 21, if the channel is challenged based on new construction changes in the economy and other stuff, I don't know where they'll be. They might say, hey, look, if you have to push that meeting to 22, I'm going to need that refund to get through right now. And that would be fair. That would be very fair, because at that point, the meeting hadn't been held for a year and a half. So, so far, so good. The other thing I'll say is we came up with 1 million other sponsorships like you guys did. And I think what we're also proving is the value of the association that's different than what the larger manufacturers can do for themselves. We can bring people to the table that they can't. And so they still want us, and we still have a key value prop for them that we need to think bigger and broader about. And so that's part of what we did this year, is change some of the content strategy sponsorships that weren't just the webinar stuff, but like, how could we get more creative? What assets do you have that you want to wield differently? So ask the expert, right? Q&A, like how can we do this that is like truly more effective? The other thing I'll throw out that is not necessarily sponsorship, but I think one of the things that 2020 taught us was kind of to the point of meetings is we deeply value community in associations. And, a lot of associations did things like town halls and like, community discussions. And I think that has value. It's free. It's part of your membership benefit. And then to that point, legislative issues that came up and how the association can get to that uniquely and differently, and then telling the members what you did and then encouraging them to handle that locally. So that community component, we're here for you. We will support you when the times are down. And here's some resources for you to advocate locally. We'll do it nationally. I mean, I think, over and over, you end up proving that member value proposition because you were there for them in that crisis in a multi-tiered approach.
Alan, it looks like you got something to add there.
Yeah, I think that's a great point on the legislative piece of talking to at the national level, and also giving them opportunities or resources to share. And I think one of the things that we found out that if we tell stories from the field, it makes the legislative approach so much better. And it's hard to turn down when you talk about, oh, we have broadband issues. And they say, okay, we get it. When you say there's 27 students in this one little area that can't get access to anything, okay, we're in America. That should not be the case. And I think that storytelling, that part of, or what teachers, we had a teacher in California, part of our group, that pretty much went to service providers, cell phone providers, and basically opened up a line of access for her students that was taking our politicians and local leaders a long time to discover. She did it in 6 months just by working the pavement and saying, we're going to do this. And I think you're kind of encouraging them to step out. They're going to do it anyway, but it makes the story more powerful in DC when you can say, if one third grade teacher in California can do this, come on, let's do something here. Let's get something going. So I think that's the best part of it. So.
And I'll
That's a great
build
story
off
too.
of Alan and give a shameless plug for Glue Up, but it's, you know, it's how we take our notes, right? Like how we take notes has changed, right? And you go on to a virtual meeting, you know, well, you used to have like a board meeting, and then it was somebody's job as secretary to write up the board minutes. And it's like, do you remember everything? Maybe you record it and you transcribe it. But now you go on a meeting and you can take notes in real time, right? And then you agree to the notes and you don't have the issues that come up because somebody played the telephone game wrong. Or, you know, we all have, like, tiller means two different things, right? Tiller is something that's on a sailboat that gets you from point A to point B, but a tiller is also what goes in the ground to farm. And we have a lot of different languages here in this country. If nobody's figured that out, like 40% of us don't even speak English, maybe. And, you know, when we break into our idioms in language, it makes it very hard for that English as a second language learner to learn. And that's where I think the digital allows people, when it's written down, when like communication happens in print. Now my name's Toner, not that that has anything to do with print, but you know, there is, you can read, everyone can read or should be able to read, right? And I think that's the other, don't get me started about the segment of the population that can't read the ballot that we vote on, but that's politics. I'm not getting into politics, but like to Alan's point about getting people education, we all need to read better in this country if we're going to have our own opinions.
Yeah, I guess let's talk a little bit as we have sort of thought about member engagement and what does the ideal scenario look like when we think about engaging with members as a whole. Maybe Sharon, we'll start with you. You know, one or two strategies that, you know, you guys have come up with that maybe weren't so obvious before, but have really started to help you guys connect with the members in a digital world or, you know, written form, as it's been, you know, email communication has been up. I mean, we've seen even from our platform statistics, email communication, you know, in many organizations it was maybe once a month. Email traffic has gone through the roof, you know, since last March. And I'm not sure, obviously you guys are part of that, but, you know, maybe one or two things that you guys have seen and really started to think about and have worked from a member engagement standpoint that should help as we look forward to this year.
You know, Eric, I will say a couple of things that we already had that were in that realm that I'm going to probably better answer that with my dream versus my reality. So part of my reality that we do pretty well is we've always been pretty intense on email communications and the Marcom side of things, because when the recession hit for us in 2008, just kind of hearkening back, my members didn't feel it right away. We all felt it right away to a certain degree, but my members really felt it like around 2010. And then they took longer to come back than everybody else because it's 2 years later. And so we had a serious group of years where we were really financially like just trying to get through. And then we realized, let's use this chance to restructure our strategies and really revisit, like, what does relevance look like when this is over? And what does communication look like? And what does our education value proposition look like? And do we need different certifications? Is the market different? And so we ended up adding 5 new certifications. We rebranded the magazine. We rebranded the organization because we made everything look and feel different. So the name better evolve and the look and the feel of it better evolve. And we upgraded our AMS and changed our websites and redesigned this and redesigned that. And we added a whole bunch of new classes. And I mean, there was not an aspect of who we are as an organization that we didn't end up changing. And so we've been kind of writing that, and we were about to change our strategic plan this year, well, in 2020. That didn't happen, but that was the goal in 2020. And so what I'll say is we've been actually riding the coattails of that a little bit. Certainly have innovated and done some things along the way, because you got to, in a 5-year plan, you're not just like riding it out. But what I think would be wonderful as we move forward, hearkening back to a Glue Up shout out, but like, I'm not trying to pander, but I will say, you know, Eric and I in our conversations, he really helped me understand, because I have been in that North American mindset about technology being from your computer. And the premise of it being in your phone, like all the things in your phone, your whole AMS, your CRM, like all those things in your phone, and that that's reasonable to consider, not just your website, but a few other things. And, you know, from the other perspective, our foundation and giving. I mean, giving has got to be easy these days, right? And so we've been very lucky in that, again, with the loyalty of our members, we can, through an email campaign with my trustees and relationships, we've been able to raise pretty much all of our fundraising money through those electronic communications. But I don't have right now, and should have, the texting and the monthly giving, and, you know, things that are automated and through the phone and easy to access. And so it doesn't require one of my trustees, I've got to come up with the email, and here's the attachment about our value proposition, and will you please, once again, maybe 5% more. You know, we could be doing it all year round, and all kinds of drip campaigns that are mobile friendly. And I think we have to get there. I will say, kind of with that same old mindset that I had prior to that conversation with you, Eric, I was, you know, not quite realizing, even in the social media component, we don't touch Instagram or TikTok. Like, we don't do those things. But you know what? The people I need in this industry and the people I need to join the association, they do. So why am I acting like we're too good for like those platforms, when in fact, those are my future leaders are sitting in there? Why am I not going to get them? So, you know, the strategic planning we will do, and I'll add kind of a layer to that, is that in this kind of pandemic life, I'm on the ASE Foresight Works Advisory Group, and talking about, so what are some of the trends that we're seeing, and what are some of the research around that? And I don't have the answer, but I will say one of the big ones on my radar, and that I think affects all associations, but us in particular for sure, is the death of expertise. Was one of the trends that the Foresight Works said was a threat to us and our associations. And the premise that someone thinks they can go on the internet and Google it. No, we need to be all over that. And so where do I need to be in order to grow the industry, grow the association, meet people where they're at, including the technology component, and getting at the head of the fact that the experts always need to be the ones you turn to. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, how am I helping you build a career if I'm not keeping the certification, like the top-notch version of the achievement that you want to have in your career, or me as a CAE? Yeah, so
we're going to see some TikTok videos from you very soon, huh?
Yeah, I'm going to be dancing. There's going to be cartoons, pop music. Just you wait.
John, how about for you all?
Yeah, you know, I think we're still trying to figure out our path forward with communications. You know, I that's the job of a trade association, is to open up the door for other people, right? Like, you know, we want to open doors for our members, and we want to help our members keep their doors open. Not to play Sharon on doors, but, you know, we use a lot of roll-up doors in the produce industry. I know a lot about automatic doors, more than I care to know. But traditional communication has been all one directional, right? Everyone was on a lectern or a podium or a microphone with their backdrop behind them. Guess what? We all have custom backdrops right now. What? How did that happen? We have a panel with custom backdrops and it's for free? But it's communications now go two ways because of the internet, right? And I think we were all used to these one-directional communications. You would send a letter, somebody would send you a letter back, or they wouldn't. You send an email, they either respond or they don't. And I think, you know, we're all getting used to getting read receipts like we used to hate them. 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I would hate somebody if they turned a read receipt on me because that meant I had to reply. Well, guess what? If they sent me an email, I should have replied because that meant they wanted to talk to me. And I think those read receipts, like, you know, when you're on LinkedIn, you see that little icon come up that says someone read it. That means you at least know whether or not they received the communication, right? And I think for a lot of us, our communications were lost for, I don't know, we're still figuring it out. But I look at our email analytics and I know I'm not happy. So it's got to get better. But again, it's one-on-one. It is back to relationships, right? To Alan's point, a personal note, a personal card, picking up the phone. You know, I probably do 20 hours of phone calls a week now. I'm going to say I was probably down to like 10 or maybe less than 10 pre-pandemic, but I'll do miss a trade show floor. You can have 50 conversations in 1 hour on a trade show floor. There's no better medium than face-to-face because that is the ultimate two-way communication.
Alan?
Yeah, great points again. And I'll close it out on this part of this question with, we just found different ways to communicate. And one of the ways that kind of made it a great, you know, obviously email, social media, sending a text or calling, but we started podcasting, and then podcasts have been very good for us. And we've had legislators on, we've had top lobbyists, we've had different industry folks on. We talked about the workplace and economic development. We talked about just community in general. We talked about COVID and the pandemic and how schools are handling it. That's been the most popular kind of mode for us. Most recently, we dropped, I guess that's the slang they use. We dropped 3 episodes this morning. So we with different people, and they're already picking up steam, and it's pretty interesting. We were bipartisan, so we took Republicans and Democrats. We had President Biden's some of his transition team members on a podcast. And other than them having to, you know, search through it and make sure we cut things out, but it was really good to go through it, and it's been great. And it's really picked up. I think that's helped our membership as well, because you give them information they need, and it's something they can go back to, and on demand is the key. And we're seeing that we're going to do, like Sharon, we're going to do a November face-to-face conference, 2021, fingers crossed, positive vibes, but we're going to have a hybrid component with it. We're going to have an on-demand video where people can video things and share. We're going to do it. So that's us.
Very cool. Well, let me just take 2 minutes just to play another video of something that we launched at the end of last year to sort of connect people in the virtual world. And, you know, in addition to what you saw earlier in the community, take a look at that, and then we'll come back for one final question for our panelists. And yes, so that's our new speed networking tool that we launched at the end of last year, really to bring people together. The interactions that you might find at the buffet table or the bar at a conference or at a member networking night, trying to simulate a lot of that into the virtual world, but create a different experience for folks to be able to come together and still build relationships, even though we're all still working at home. Which brings us to our final question. And we'll start with Alan, which is your bold prediction for 2021
It's from any area of our work or just in general?
for associations, for events, whatever, economy, however you want to answer it.
I wouldn't say that it's going to be two-part then. Semi-bold is going to be, we're going to do some face-to-face conferencing and we're going to have a hybrid component with it. A major bold is by the end of 2021, we will understand better our new normal and we will work within that new normal. And I think our schools and every aspect that we deal with will be better coming out of this and be stronger.
Great. Sharon?
Yeah, I agree with Alan about having in-person meetings. And even if there's a hybrid component, I think that I think we all hope for that. So I don't know how bold that is either. I'm with you, Alan, but at the same time, it feels really bold. The other thing that I'll throw out there is because I have a bias for the power of culture within your staff and within your organization and the membership. And I think that with all of us being remote and not being able to be together and all of the things we've talked about at different lenses of equity and inclusion, I think that by the end of 21, particularly for those who really started some sort of efforts in 20, we're going to have had some time to understand the impact of intentional or unintentional consequences and things that have happened. And we'll be hopefully in a new place where we're a little more resourced and savvy on those impacts so that when we do come back together and hopefully by 22, a little bit more planned, that we can be very intentional about positive impact on culture for our staff and for our members and their organizations as well.
Great. Finally, John.
Yeah, we're hoping for June too. We have our live event the last week in June. So, we're probably not going to move. We will either do it or we'll figure out, a suitable alternative. We can do the digital okay. I think we all got a hall pass in 2020. And so 2021, we will have to, whatever we do has to be better than it was the year before. But, I'm going to hang my hat on a 4-letter word that I don't like to use publicly too much, but I think we heard a lot of it yesterday, and it's a word called love. I think people love their country, they love their industry, and they love their job, right? Like, people have to love what they do. If they come in hating their job, that's not good culture. To your point, Sharon, that's not somebody we want on our team or on any team. So we got to help people find pride in their job that they have or the job that they want to do. And that's on all of us to make sure that, again, we keep opening doors for people to find new opportunities. But focus on love and not hate. Like, I think we all had too much hate. Or there was too many optics of hate.
Excellent point. And that's where we're all hoping for a exciting and much better 2021 from all aspects, and certainly looking forward to making sure that we're all part of the solution rather than the problem. And again, as we look forward to what our associations looking forward to next, what's for events, still to be determined. Lots of things to be worked out from a safety perspective and certainly medical wise, but we certainly wish everybody the best 2021. Obviously from a Glue Up standpoint, anything we can do to provide the technology, helping memberships, helping the events, we are more than happy to do what we can. But till next month when we run our next event, thank you all very much, Alan, John, and Sharon. Much appreciate your time this afternoon, and look forward to having you all back again soon. And everybody who's on the call, thank you for participating, and welcome to 2021. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.